Section 1. The Dawn of Mammalian Consciousness. Close your eyes now and let your mind drift back across the vastness of time, to a world that was both the same and yet fundamentally different. Imagine a canvas of deep, prehistoric greens and muted earth tones, bathed in the soft, ancient light of a developing sun. This is the world before Zootopia. We are reaching back past memory, past any known record, to the dawn of mammalian consciousness. It is a quiet, speculative era, the true history of this world. There is no official written account from this time, but based on the societal framework we see today, we can assume a deep, slow transition took place, a monumental, species-wide contemplation that must have occurred over millennia. Imagine the ancestors of today's civilized mammals, not amidst the rush of the modern city, but moving through dense, primal forests. The deep, rhythmic silence of the night, broken only by the natural sounds of their existence. It's important to understand the fundamental split that defined this early time, the distinction between predator and prey. This was not just a dietary difference, it was a division of perspective, a separation in how the world was perceived. The prey ancestors, perhaps the early solitary lemmings, the cautious gazelles, the nervous, quick-footed hares, they moved with an awareness that was constantly outward-focused. Their senses, sharp and perpetually on alert, were tuned to the rustle of a single leaf, the snap of a twig, the faint, earthy scent of a stalker on the wind. Their lives were a series of calculated movements, a slow, continuous dance of survival, a deep-seated instinct for flight. This constant awareness, this necessary vigilance, must have forged a specific kind of communal bond, a quiet, shared understanding of vulnerability. They knew, in the deepest part of their instinct, that their safety lay in numbers, in the silent, collective agreement to watch out for one another. As we look at the bustling, community-driven nature of modern Zootopia, particularly in places like Bunnyburrow, this could imply that the foundation of their culture is rooted in this shared, prehistoric need for communal protection and cooperation, a gentle, unspoken pact forged in the wilderness. Now turn your attention to the predator ancestors, the powerful, silent felines, the cunning, resourceful canids, the massive, lumbering bears. Their experience was different, not a constant state of fear, but a calculated, patient stillness. They possessed an instinct for the hunt, for the long, slow wait, the sudden burst of energy, the precise moment of action. Their perception was one of focus, of isolation in the pursuit. They had to be independent, relying on their own strength, their own senses. Yet, as we trace their lineage to modern Zootopian society, we see they too are capable of deep loyalty and partnership. Based on what we know, we can assume that their transition to consciousness involved a difficult, deliberate rechanneling of this intense, isolated instinct into societal roles, shifting the precision of the hunt into the focus of a craftsperson, the patience of a stalker into the dedication of a civil servant. The most critical period, the quietest revolution, was the moment when a predatory ancestor, standing over its potential meal, paused, not from a satiated belly, but from a flicker of recognition, a dawning sense of shared being. And the moment a prey ancestor, seeing a predator approach, did not immediately flee, but held its ground, perhaps with a shared, tentative curiosity. This was the moment the great separation began to dissolve, not in a sudden, violent clash, but in a long, slow, quiet realization. Imagine the millennia passing, with one generation after another taking tentative small steps toward understanding. The creation of rudimentary shelters, the sharing of fire, not just for warmth, but as a meeting point. The dawning understanding of language, of complex thought, of an inherited history. This suggests that the first true cities were not built overnight, but rather began as small, mixed-species camps, where the sheer practicality of coexistence slowly chipped away at the old, primal fears. A wolf could offer protection from the elements, while a sheep could offer the knowledge of edible plants. It was a mutual reliance born not of sudden enlightenment, but of necessity and the slow dawning light of reason. The very concept of a single, shared society, Zootopia, could not have been a single legislative act. It was an oceanic tide of change, measured in centuries. The first cities would have been loose collectives, where the very act of a large feline and a small rodent sharing the same marketplace was a revolutionary act. The whispers of the past, the growls, the cries, were slowly being replaced by the common speech, a new, shared narrative that valued empathy over instinct. This era, the time of the first great pause, is essential to the Zootopia we know. It laid the emotional and ethical groundwork. It was the moment that the deep evolutionary trauma, the instinctual terror and the instinctual aggression, was placed under the mantle of civility. This required immense generational effort, a kind of collective self-hypnosis, where the ancient biological programming was consciously overwritten with a new social code. Now let the image of the dense, silent forest slowly fade, and listen only to the quiet, rhythmic sound of your own breathing, in and out. The early history of Zootopia is not a story of conquest or war, but a beautiful, long, slow story of shared, quiet realization, a promise whispered in the silence, a promise that continues to be kept to this very day. Drift deeper now as we prepare to move forward in time to the next great stage, the forging of the true foundation. Section 2. The Great Transition and the Peace Vows. We now enter a period where the tentative coexistence of the previous era begins to solidify, a time known in some texts, perhaps, as the Great Transition. This is the moment the ancestors stopped merely tolerating each other and began the arduous, profound work of defining a shared future. Imagine a vast, open plain, bathed in the tranquil, silvery light of a full moon. This plain becomes the symbolic stage for the most important, defining moment in Zootopian lore, the formal, species-spanning commitment to harmony. These were the Peace Vows. While the precise details are, again, lost to immediate record, the spirit of these vows is the bedrock of the city's philosophy, the quiet agreement that resonates in every law, every policy, and every street corner. The central challenge was instinct, the deep, ingrained, biological drives that had governed life for millions of years were not simply gone. They were suppressed, redirected, and managed. To build a world where a mouse felt safe sharing a city sidewalk with a tiger required more than just walls and buildings. It required a monumental, shared commitment to psychological change. Consider the complexity of creating a universal diet, or even a universal set of etiquette rules. We can infer that early attempts at shared governance involved profound disagreements. How do you create a system that addresses the primal fear of the prey while respecting the natural, non-malicious strength of the predator? The answer lay in the establishment of the fundamental shared values, the unspoken rules that preceded all others. No one is defined by their lineage. Every mammal is entitled to security and the pursuit of happiness. The Peace Vows, therefore, were less about a legal document and more about a shared cultural narrative. Imagine the leaders of the various species, the herbivores, the carnivores, the omnivores, meeting in a quiet, central location. The act of the powerful predator sitting respectfully beside the diminutive prey animal was the vow itself. The pledge was to use their strength for the community, not on it. The pledge for the prey was to offer trust, a difficult and monumental gift in return for protection. This mutual giving and receiving is what paved the way for the sophisticated modern society. This era also saw the slow, deliberate rise of the philosophy of mutual accommodation. This is evident in the foundational design of the early settlements. Before the towering skyscrapers of Savannah Central, before the controlled climate of Tundratown, the first architectural experiments were all about creating spaces where difference was not a liability, but an asset. Think of the early pathways, small, delicate paths for the rodents and shrews, placed safely alongside the main thoroughfares used by the larger species. This wasn't segregation, it was acknowledgement and respect for scale. The simple act of designing doors and vehicles to safely accommodate a polar bear, a fox, and an elephant simultaneously is a physical manifestation of the Peace Vows. It's the world saying, you all belong here exactly as you are. It is based on this evidence that we can assume the earliest Zootopian government was a council, a diverse assembly where proportional representation was less about sheer numbers and more about ensuring every ecological and societal viewpoint was heard. The importance of the smallest voice, the shrews, being given the same gravity as the largest, the rhinos, became the guiding principle of jurisprudence. The Great Transition was not just about overcoming fear, it was about the re-evaluation of instinct. This is a crucial, deep law point. The biological imperative to hunt and the biological imperative to flee had to be reframed. The speed of the cheetah was not to be used for chase, but perhaps for rapid response or delivery. The strength of the ox was not for territorial defense, but for construction and labor. Every natural trait was slowly, patiently, given a pro-social purpose. This societal reframing is the true magic of Zootopia. Let your thoughts rest on this gentle, profound change. The shift from the harshness of the wild to the softness of civilization. Imagine the quiet dedication of the early educators and storytellers of this time. They were the true architects of peace. They had to invent a completely new mythology, new lullabies, new histories that celebrated coexistence and gently erased the narratives of conflict. The stories told to the young of this generation would not have been about fierce hunts, but about shared harvests, not about narrow escapes, but about broad collaborations. These cultural efforts, the slow, consistent nurturing of a new shared imagination, were the mortar between the bricks of the first buildings. The legacy of the Peace Vows is the city itself. Zootopia is the continuous physical manifestation of a promise made in the quiet of the night, long, long ago. It is a world built on a shared collective dream of safety and inclusion. The deep hum you might hear in the city's power grid, the gentle rush of its climate control systems, the distant sound of a train, all of it is the quiet, constant echo of that ancient, profound commitment. Drift now, letting the sound of your breathing slow and deepen. As we move from the philosophy of the world to the creation of its physical form, the great architectural marvel that defined Zootopia. Section 3. Architects of Zootopia. The birth of Biomes. Now let us examine the brilliant, multi-species collaboration that created the true wonder of Zootopia, its distinct, interconnected biomes. This was not merely urban planning. It was an act of ecological empathy, a grand, unified effort to create a comfortable, familiar home for every single species, from the tiniest to the largest, from the desert dwelling to the Arctic adapted. The very name, Zootopia, a utopia for all animals, demanded a physical reality where a polar bear could stand next to a fennec fox without one melting and the other freezing. This challenge was met with architectural genius and engineering precision, all done with a calming, deliberate pace. Let's begin our slow, tranquil exploration in the chilling yet beautifully managed world of Tundratown. Imagine the silent, continuous operation of the massive climate control systems that keep this entire district in a state of perpetual, comfortable winter. This is not a natural tundra. It is a meticulously sustained environment. The earliest plans for this biome would suggest that the architects were primarily concerned with the comfort of the northern and Arctic species: polar bears, moose, snow leopards, and wolverines. Everything is designed to retain a deep, insulating cold. Notice the thick, snow-like covering that is not merely decorative, but actually an engineered, specialized material that aids in insulation and footing. The architecture is sturdy, often utilizing heavy, rounded forms that shed snow and reduce wind chill. The dominant aesthetic is one of solid, dependable calm, the quiet strength of the north. The creation of Tundratown was a profound gesture to the larger cold-weather species, ensuring that their strength and size did not exclude them from the center of civilization. They are an integral, visible part of the city, not relegated to the frozen periphery. Now, let your mind drift slowly, following the massive insulated pipes that manage the temperature gradient, as we move toward the blazing, sun-drenched beauty of Sahara Square. This district is the city's response to the desert-adapted: camels, fennec foxes, desert hares, and gerbils. The challenge here was the opposite of Tundratown: how to create intense, dry heat without making the rest of the city uncomfortable, and how to manage the intense sunlight. The solution was brilliant: massive, climate-controlled domes and specialized glass structures that trap the heat and filter the light. The color palette here is warm, calming ochres and deep terracotta reds. The buildings often feature wide, shady overhangs and deep courtyards, creating quiet, cool sanctuaries from the sun. Based on what we see, we can assume that the earliest engineers in this section were masters of hydraulics and thermal dynamics, designing the massive hidden irrigation systems that maintain the required humidity levels and feed the desert-adapted flora. Sahara Square is a place of slow, sun-drenched calm. The rhythm of life is often dictated by the slow, deliberate movement of the sun across the sky, encouraging rest and shade. Continuing our quiet journey, we move now to the dense, dripping air and lush, overwhelming green of the rainforest district. This biome is a true masterpiece of engineering, requiring a continuous, controlled downpour and an exceptionally high level of humidity. Giant, interconnected pipes and pumping stations, working so silently and efficiently that you almost forget they exist, are constantly cycling water and mist through the air. The district is literally built around and into massive vertical structures that mimic the high canopy of a rainforest. This was a critical design choice to accommodate species like jaguars, sloths, and tropical birds, allowing them to utilize the vertical space they naturally inhabit. The soft, rhythmic sound of the constant, gentle rain is a natural, soothing presence. The movement here is often slow, like the celebrated speed of the sloths in the Department of Mammal Vehicles, DMV, a quiet, patient acknowledgement of a different rhythm of life. It could be implied that the architects of the rainforest district intentionally designed it to slow the frantic pace of city life, offering a tranquil, damp, and shaded counterpoint to the rush of Savannah Central. Finally, we arrive at the expansive central heart of the city, Savannah Central. This is the largest and most varied district representing the generalist species: elephants, giraffes, buffalo, and many of the mid-sized predators and prey. Its environment is temperate and controlled, a kind of eternal, perfect summer day. The focus here was on scale and flow. The towering open architecture, the wide, vast streets, and the sheer volume of space are designed to comfortably accommodate the largest inhabitants. The train station, a masterpiece of logistical integration, sits here, a symbol of connection. The clockwork efficiency of the city's transportation and infrastructure, from the massive elephant doors to the tiny rodent tunnels, all converge here. Savannah Central is the humming, organized center, a place of constant, gentle activity, designed to facilitate the smooth, calm interaction of all the other biomes. The creation of the biomes was more than a technical achievement. It was the physical embodiment of Zootopia's promise. It demonstrated that differences were not just accepted, but were celebrated and accommodated down to the most precise degree of temperature, humidity, and scale. This foundational effort set the stage for all future growth, ensuring that no mammal felt left out or alienated by the march of progress. Let the image of the vast, intricate network of pipes, tunnels, and climate-controlled zones settle in your mind. The city is a living, breathing machine, quietly working to maintain a peaceful balance. Drift deeper now, resting in the knowledge of this beautifully ordered world. We will pause here before moving to the development of the city's laws and the beginning of its character histories. Section 4. The evolution of law and order. We move now from the physical architecture of the city to the architecture of its society. The slow, deliberate creation of the law and order systems that govern every interaction within Zootopia. This development was crucial, as merely agreeing to peace was not enough. The peace had to be codified, enforced, and universally respected. The earliest legal framework, building upon the spirit of the Peace Vows, focused intensely on the concept of equality of protection, not just equality of punishment. Consider the practical challenge. A simple scuffle between a rhinoceros and a shrew could not be treated the same way as a scuffle between two similar-sized animals. The law had to account for scale, strength, and inherent vulnerabilities. This implies that the first laws were complex, multi-tiered guidelines that sought to protect the weaker party from unintentional harm, as much as intentional malice. For instance, laws concerning public space and movement would have been strict about maintaining safe transit for the smaller mammals, treating any reckless endangerment due to size with particular seriousness. This was the city's deep-seated institutional commitment to the vulnerable. The creation of the Zootopia Police Department, ZPD, was the physical manifestation of this legal commitment. The ZPD's founding principle was the rechanneling of the powerful, primal instincts of the predator class into a force for protection. In the early days, it is safe to assume that the ZPD was predominantly staffed by the larger, more robust species: bears, rhinos, lions, and wolves. This was not a bias, but a practical necessity. The strength and size needed to physically de-escalate major incidents. Their mere presence was a powerful deterrent, a calming, visible reminder that the strongest mammals were now sworn to safeguard the weakest. The evolution of the ZPD's training is a quiet, profound story in itself. The curriculum had to be revolutionary. It wasn't about martial arts or simple crowd control. It was about de-escalation through empathy. Officers had to be trained to understand not just the letter of the law, but the cultural and biological context of every species. A mammal from Tundratown reacts differently to stress than a mammal from Sahara Square. A prey species' instinct to panic had to be anticipated and managed with a soft, authoritative calm. This is why the modern ZPD is so focused on psychological assessments and sensitivity training. It is a direct legacy of this founding need to bridge the ancient divide. The legal system also had to deal with the inevitable, quiet persistence of species-based prejudice. Even after the Peace Vows, old fears and biases lingered like a persistent, faint shadow. The slow, patient work of the courts was to constantly reinforce the principle of individual merit over species stereotype. Every ruling, every judicial decision was a quiet, authoritative statement. Your actions, not your ancestors, define you. The development of anti-discrimination laws, slowly and carefully woven into the city's charter, was a continuous effort, a quiet war waged against the lingering echoes of instinctual bias. The ZPD also pioneered specialized units designed to accommodate the city's unique challenges, such as the Rodent Security and Traffic Division. This tiny, precise force, which manages the intricate micro-environments and travel lanes for the smallest citizens, is a beautiful example of Zootopia's commitment. It's not just an afterthought, it's an essential, highly trained, and sophisticated branch of law enforcement, fully integrated into the larger ZPD command structure. The quiet, enduring success of Zootopia's law and order lies in its institutional humility. The system, while strong, is constantly seeking to improve and refine itself. The city council, comprised of mammals from every district and species, continually debates the subtle nuances of societal interaction. It's a continuous, patient conversation about how best to keep the peace vows alive and relevant in a modern, bustling metropolis. Let the image of the stately ZPD headquarters, a symbol of quiet authority, settle in your mind. Imagine the soft glow of the lights over the drafting tables where laws are carefully written and revised. The order of the city is not accidental. It is a continuously maintained peace, supported by a deep, shared commitment to justice. Rest now, as we gently shift our focus from the city itself to the small, vital seeds of character that would one day define it. Section 5. The Carrot Farm Dreams, Judy Hopps' Early Life, Part 1. Our journey now takes us far from the gleaming towers of Savannah Central and into the endless, soothing rows of Bunnyborough. This is the heartland, the vast agricultural expanse that quietly feeds Zootopia. Imagine the gentle, repetitive rhythm of life here. The soft rustle of carrot tops in a field that stretches to the horizon. The warm, earthy scent of rich soil. The gentle, constant, comforting presence of family. This is the world that shaped Judy Hopps. She was born into a family of an astronomical size, 275 brothers and sisters, all managed by the pragmatic, loving Gideon and Bonnie Hopps. This environment of overwhelming, cooperative family life is the single most defining influence on her character. Imagine the sheer logistical marvel of the Hopps family home. It's not chaos. It's a highly structured, cooperative organism. Every single bunny has a designated task, a contribution to the whole. Judy, as one of the middle siblings, learned early on the power of teamwork and diligence. When you are one of 275, the only way to be seen and to succeed is through sheer effort and unwavering optimism. We can assume that her inherent, relentless drive was forged in the simple need to be the fastest planter or the most efficient harvester among her hundreds of siblings. Her ambition was first fueled by the quiet, internal competition of the family farm. Her early life was characterized by a deep, unconditional love for her community, but also a growing sense of limitation. Bunnyburrow, with all its comfort and familiarity, was designed for safety, for the continuation of the carrot farming legacy. There was a quiet expectation that every Hopps would follow the path, stick to the farm. Yet, even as a kid, Judy possessed a profound, almost revolutionary curiosity about the world outside the fence line. She was drawn to the news reports of Zootopia, the shining city that promised an impossible dream, a place where a bunny could be anything, even a police officer. This was a radical thought in Bunnyburrow, where the primary concern was prudence and safety. Her parents' anxieties, though loving, were deep-seated and entirely rational, born of generations of understanding the harsh realities of the predator-prey dynamic. Their gentle warnings to her: "It's great to have dreams, just as long as you don't believe in them too much," were not meant to crush her spirit, but to protect her from inevitable disappointment in a world not truly built for her size. The moment that likely crystallized her desire, that quiet spark that became an internal flame, was the incident with the bully, Gideon Gray. While only a small skirmish on a childhood farm, this event was a microcosm of the larger Zootopian challenge. Judy, a small prey animal, stood up to a large predatory fox, not through physical strength, but through sheer moral conviction. Even though she got hurt, the act itself, the refusal to back down, the commitment to protecting the smaller kits, defined her future path. This incident could imply that her ambition to join the ZPD was not just a career choice, but a fundamental, deeply personal response to injustice. She wanted to institutionalize her childhood courage, to make it the basis of her adult life. Imagine her, late at night, in the quiet of the farmhouse, hunched over a tiny, worn-out Zootopia Police Academy brochure. The light from a single small lamp illuminates the images of the large, imposing police mammals: the buffalo, the tiger, the bear. The gap between her small, vulnerable reality and the grandeur of her dream was immense. But in the rhythmic quiet of the farmhouse, with the faint, comforting smell of carrots drifting in from the fields, her resolve only deepened. The decision to leave Bunnyburrow was not just a simple move. It was a societal break, an act of quiet defiance against generations of tradition. But she carried the spirit of the farm with her, the unwavering work ethic, the cooperative nature, and the relentless, almost naive optimism that anything is possible if you just try harder. Let the comforting, rural quiet of Bunnyburrow settle over you now. The deep, peaceful silence of a world where things grow slowly and predictably. Rest now as we follow Judy on her great journey to the city and the beginning of her physical transformation. Section 6. The City's Call. Judy Hopps' Early Life, Part 2. We now join Judy Hopps as she makes the leap from the calm, familiar earth of Bunnyburrow to the gleaming, electric energy of Zootopia, specifically the rigorous, multi-species environment of the Zootopia Police Academy. The Academy is a physical representation of Zootopia's ultimate challenge, forcing all species to succeed within the same, universally high standard. For a small bunny, this environment was physically daunting, but spiritually invigorating. Imagine the immense, controlled energy of the training grounds. Massive rhinos run alongside fleet-footed gazelles. Powerful bears wrestle with agile wolves. And then there is Judy, the smallest recruit, moving with a focus and determination that belied her size. The training was deliberately designed to be species agnostic, a test of pure will and skill. However, in practical application, it was a brutal test of adaptation for Judy. Imagine the challenges: the avalanche of terror, a classic ZPD obstacle designed to test reaction time under extreme stress. For larger mammals, it's a physical challenge. For Judy, it was a constant, instinctual battle against her own biology, the innate prey response screaming flee, while her conscious mind commanded solve the problem. We can infer that her success in this and other similar exercises came from a hyper-focus, a mental compartmentalization that allowed her to override millions of years of evolutionary programming. The Tundratown climbs, scaling icy walls and navigating snowdrifts, a natural terrain for her cold-weather comrades, was a constant struggle against the cold and the sheer physics of her low mass. Her victory here was a testament to meticulous planning and utilizing the terrain with a tactical brilliance her larger peers didn't need. The mud pit crawl. This exercise was designed to test endurance and camouflage. While her bunny speed was an asset, her small size meant she had to expend proportionally far more energy to cover the same distance as a water buffalo. The narration of her time at the academy is the slow, methodical description of perseverance as a physical discipline. It wasn't one great moment of glory. It was thousands of small, quiet victories. The extra run before dawn, the hundreds of times she fell and got back up, the unwavering focus during the dullest lectures. Every muscle ache, every moment of doubt was quietly pushed aside by the immense, deep-rooted dream she carried from Bunnyburrow. Her graduation from the academy was more than a personal triumph. It was a symbolic victory for Zootopia's ideology. It proved the city's promise that a mammal can be anything, regardless of their species or size. Chief Bogo, the imposing Cape Buffalo, recognizing her unprecedented score and effort, was forced to acknowledge the practical success of her dedication. However, the ZPD's assignment to Savannah Central was a quiet, sobering dose of reality. Though she was a graduate, she was the first rabbit officer, and the institution was not ready to fully integrate her. Her assignment to meter maid duty, while frustrating, was a quiet, final test of her commitment. This could imply that the ZPD command staff was not questioning her ability, but her endurance for the tedious, unglamorous work. Could she maintain her idealistic energy when the job was boring, repetitive, and felt beneath her? The answer, of course, was yes. Judy approached meter maid duty with the same meticulous, hyper-efficient discipline she had applied to the academy. She became the most efficient ticket writer in Zootopia history, a testament to her foundational belief that every job, no matter how small, is essential to the functioning of the city. Now, let your mind rest on the quiet image of Officer Hopps, alone in her small apartment, polishing her badge, her gaze fixed on the lights of the city she had fought so hard to join. The sound of the city is a distant, gentle hum, a promise still waiting to be fulfilled. Rest deep now, as we shift our focus to a completely different origin story, the quiet, streetwise development of the city's most cynical yet charming resident. Section 7. The Streetwise Fox, Nick Wilde's Early Life, Part 1. Our focus now shifts to a quieter, more shadowed corner of Zootopia's history, tracing the origins of the charming, cynical, and ultimately loyal fox, Nicholas Piberius Wilde. His story is not one of great ambition, but of quiet survival and the profound pain of an early, defining disappointment. Nick was born in the heart of Zootopia, making him a true city native. His mother, a single parent, raised him with love and a strong desire for him to have a life free from the negative stereotypes often associated with foxes: cunning, untrustworthy, and inherently predatory. We can assume his early life was one of careful, deliberate integration. His mother would have encouraged him to seek out multi-species environments, to prove himself friendly and capable, in the hope that his natural charm would outweigh the societal baggage of his species. This brings us to the defining, foundational trauma of his young life, the Junior Ranger Scouts incident. Imagine a simple, hopeful scene. A young 6-year-old Nick, clean and wearing a meticulously pressed green uniform. He is full of tentative optimism, eager to be accepted by the other young mammal scouts, who are mostly prey animals like rabbits, sheep, and squirrels. He wanted to belong, to be seen as a kind, loyal friend. His mother had saved and sacrificed to get him the uniform, to give him this chance at true, species-blind acceptance. The other scouts, however, were products of a society where, despite the peace vows and the law and order systems, instinctual prejudice still lingered. When the truth of his identity, a fox, a predator, was revealed in a moment of vulnerability, the reaction was immediate and brutal. The gentle, shared experience turned into a terrifying moment of institutionalized bullying. He was muzzled. The muzzling was not just a physical act. It was a profound, symbolic humiliation. It was the world telling him, in the clearest possible terms, that no matter how much he tried, his species' history would always define him. It was a societal veto on his true good nature. The experience taught him a terrible, enduring lesson. If the world sees you as a sly, untrustworthy fox, there is no point in trying to be anything else. Imagine the long walk home with his mother, the silence heavier than any sound, the scent of the city suddenly tasting of betrayal. It was in the quiet, reflective aftermath of this event that Nick made his choice. He abandoned his aspirations for genuine, open connection. He began to build a wall around his true, vulnerable self. The new Nick was born from this pain. A cynical, street-smart survivor who decided to embrace the stereotype. He adopted the sly smirk, the calculated posture, the laid-back confidence of a fox who has nothing to lose. His natural intelligence, which could have been channeled into a professional career, was instead redirected into the art of the hustle. This could imply that his primary motivation was not greed, but a deep, protective shield against vulnerability. By being the one to trick others, he was ensuring he would never be tricked, hurt, or disappointed again. His hustles were not just about money. They were a complex, self-validating performance designed to prove that the world was right about him. He was a clever, self-serving fox, and therefore, the world couldn't surprise or wound him again. The history of Nick Wilde is a quiet, powerful counterpoint to the history of Zootopia itself. If the city is the story of a promise kept, Nick is the story of a promise broken. His early life is a testament to the lingering, difficult work still required to truly fulfill the dream of Zootopia. Let the image of the fox, alone but self-sufficient in the quiet corners of the city, settle in your mind. The gentle, constant rhythm of your breathing is the only thing you need to focus on. Rest now, as we delve deeper into the intricate world of his quiet survival. Section 8. Hustle and Survival. Nick Wilde's Early Life. Part 2. Following the quiet, devastating conclusion of his time as a hopeful young scout, Nick Wilde fully committed to the life of the self-employed, streetwise hustler. This era of his life is not about flashy, grand crimes. It's about a meticulous, day-to-day operation built on cunning, observation, and an unparalleled understanding of Zootopian psychology. Nick's business, the various hustles he ran, were not arbitrary schemes. They were miniature masterpieces of social engineering. They all exploited the same core principle: the city's ingrained, quiet prejudices and assumptions. Let us calmly examine the structure of his most famous early scheme, the Porp Cycle Racket. Step 1. The raw materials. The initial investment was small, a handful of discarded jumbo popsicles from an elephant's trunk after a brief, hot encounter. Nick would procure these quietly and legally. Step 2. The production line. The crucial next step involved his small, loyal partner, Finnick, a fennec fox. Finnick, in an elephant costume, would create the visual distraction and emotional appeal. The idea of a poor, cute, oversized child needing help. Nick would then calmly and cleanly melt down the jumbo popsicles into smaller, perfectly sized liquid portions. Step 3. The retail stage, the big con. Nick would sell the smaller, refined porcicles to weary, overheating mice and shrews passing through the small entranceways and rodent tubes. This was a clever piece of retail. He was selling them a luxury item perfectly tailored to their scale, something they couldn't get from a standard-sized vendor. Step 4. The recycling, the final profit. The final brilliant stroke, the true hustle, was the disposal. The used popsicle sticks, which he collected with painstaking diligence, were then sold to Mr. Manches's construction company as high-quality miniature lumber for building the tiny, specialized rodent apartments in Little Rodentia. This entire operation is a quiet testament to Nick's superior intelligence. He was not a violent or crude criminal. He was an unlicensed, self-taught economist and logistical genius. He saw the waste in the city, the discarded popsicles, the prejudice against foxes, and found a way to turn it all into profit and self-sufficiency. Based on what we know, we can assume that the complex nature of these hustles required a highly organized mind. A mind capable of tracking market demand, managing a supply chain, and most importantly, accurately predicting mammalian behavior. His network of contacts was also meticulously managed. He learned who to trust, rarely anyone, but deeply so when he did. Who to manipulate and who to simply avoid. He became a master of reading body language, listening to the subtle nuances in a voice, and understanding the motivations behind every request. This was a necessary survival skill. In a world that assumes the worst of you, your only defense is to be 2 steps ahead of everyone else. The life of a hustler, while financially rewarding, is an emotionally isolating one. The constant need for a disguise, a mask of smooth confidence, meant that the real Nick, the vulnerable, hopeful young fox, was buried deep beneath layers of cynicism and practiced charm. He was the perpetual outsider, a lone fox navigating the currents of a city he didn't fully trust, but knew intimately. He was the living embodiment of Zootopia's dark truth, that even in a utopia, a fox must be clever to survive, not because of nature, but because of the deep, slow-to-change nature of society. Let the image of the city's back alleys and quiet, unnoticed corners, where Nick ran his operations, settle into your mind. The city is calm, orderly, and deep. Rest now, as we bring these 2 separate histories, the bright, idealistic bunny and the cynical, streetwise fox, into their fated convergence. Section 9. The Convergence, the First Day and the Meter Maid. We arrive now at the quiet, fated day that marked the true beginning of the Zootopia we know. The day Officer Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde first encountered each other in the bustling, sunlit streets of Savannah Central. Judy, fresh off the bus from Bunnyborough, was navigating her first days as a police officer, a role immediately subverted by Chief Bogo into the tedious, repetitive duty of a meter maid. Imagine her in that bright blue uniform, a symbol of high ideals now reduced to a quiet, almost invisible function of the city's bureaucracy. She was driven, yes, but also subtly disappointed, pouring her massive ambition into the small, endless task of ticket writing. This was a test of her spirit. Could she find significance in the mundane? On the other side of the street, operating in his element, was Nick Wilde. He was observing the rhythm of the city, perfectly tuned to the slight imperfections and opportunities within its orderly flow. He was in the middle of his poor bicycle racket, utilizing his partner Finnick as a prop, a perfect small-scale exploitation of Zootopia's good nature. The encounter was a collision of opposing philosophies, unwavering idealism meeting entrenched cynicism. Judy's immediate response was that of a by-the-book police officer. She saw a violation, a large, sad-looking baby elephant, Finnick in costume, and a slick fox taking advantage of the system. She intervened, not because she was prejudiced against the fox, but because she saw an injustice, the exploitation of a perceived child's trust. The scene was the perfect trap for a rookie idealist. The situation was designed by Nick to look like a simple case of a kind, struggling fox, helping an unfortunate child, preying on the kindness of strangers. Imagine the quiet, subtle power struggle that ensued. Nick, the master manipulator, used his greatest tool, language and assumption. He played the part of the devoted, struggling parent, turning Judy's own moral code against her. He saw her badge, her newness, and her species, and instantly calculated the precise words to disarm her. His words were smooth, non-confrontational, and designed to make her feel foolish and overly suspicious. Judy, though initially outsmarted, was not defeated. She fell for the emotional trap, buying the jumbo popsicle, but her quick mind immediately processed the details that didn't fit. The small sip of the sticky liquid, the sweet, syrupy sweet flavor, clued her in. This was a momentary, crucial lapse that told her the elephant was not drinking. Her realization, following him quietly and witnessing the full, genius-level scam unfold, the melting, the retailing to the mice, the lumber recycling, was a silent moment of professional awe and personal anger. She had been fooled, not by a simple crook, but by a masterful logistical mind. The second confrontation, where she quietly and calmly showed him the popsicle stick she had recovered, was her true introduction to Nick Wilde. It was her way of saying, I may have been fooled once, but I am not stupid. I see you now, completely. Nick, seeing his entire operation laid bare by the quiet, diligent meter maid, was momentarily stunned. He realized this wasn't just another officer. This was a rabbit who thought in 3 dimensions, who was patient enough to stake out a popsicle stand, and who was tenacious enough to track the full life cycle of a discarded wooden stick. The scene concludes with Judy's quiet, professional threat and Nick's immediate, calculated response. The dismissal, the patronizing use of the word cute, and the deliberate use of the old, weary assumption. A bunny can't be a real cop. He was trying to push her back into the cage of her stereotype to ensure she would leave him alone. But the seed was planted. Judy had seen his brilliance, and Nick had witnessed her unwavering focus. Their convergence was not a moment of friendship, but a quiet, intense mutual recognition of 2 highly intelligent, complex mammals, both fundamentally defined by their choices in a city that constantly tries to choose for them. Let the sounds of the distant city and the quiet rhythm of your own breathing carry you deeper. Rest now, as we close this first chapter, with the slow, inevitable establishment of their shared path. Section X. Foundations of a Partnership Pre-Night Howler Case. We conclude this first segment of Zootopia's history by examining the quiet, subtle groundwork laid for the deep partnership between Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde, all before the explosive events of the Night Howler case forced them fully together. The initial relationship was defined by an uneasy tension, a push-pull of skepticism and grudging respect. For Judy, Nick represented the entrenched cynicism she needed to overcome. She saw his brilliance wasted on petty crime and felt a desperate, idealistic need to save him from the stereotype he had adopted. We can assume that her continued surveillance and interaction with him, though initially for professional reasons, quickly evolved into a personal fascination. She was trying to solve a puzzle. How could someone so clever, so capable, choose a life of such deliberate underachievement? For Nick, Judy was an irritating anomaly, an impossibility. She was the only mammal he had met in years who not only saw through his act but refused to accept his self-definition. Every ticket she wrote, every pointed comment, was a chip at the wall he had built around himself. His initial strategy was to use his verbal cunning to push her away, to get her to quit or leave him alone. But her persistence was a new variable he couldn't hustle. He had never encountered such relentless, optimistic honesty. The true turning point, the quiet foundation of their bond, was the moment Judy, in her desperation to solve the missing mammals case, blackmailed Nick. This was a complex moment. For Judy, it was a momentary, professional lapse, an act of desperation that temporarily compromised her idealism. For Nick, it was a calculated, satisfying moment of leverage, but something unexpected happened. Working the case together began to break down the walls. Shared observation. Nick's street smarts and detailed knowledge of the city's unseen networks were invaluable. Judy saw his intelligence not just as a tool for crime, but as a superior, intuitive method of investigation. She learned to trust his judgment on the ground, a practical trust that outweighed her initial moral concerns. Shared vulnerability. In the high-stakes environment of the investigation, the masks began to slip. Judy saw the deeper pain behind Nick's cynicism when they faced danger together. Nick saw the genuine, unshakable goodness behind Judy's relentless ambition, a goodness he hadn't believed existed in the city. The partnership was solidified by the constant, unspoken challenge they presented to one another. Judy challenged Nick's belief that the world was inherently unfair, and that he was powerless to change his fate. Nick, in his dry wit and constant questioning, challenged Judy's naive, black-and-white view of morality, forcing her to see the shades of grey that defined the true complexities of Zootopia. The relationship, therefore, became a mutual redemption narrative. Judy needed Nick's street-smart realism to become a better cop. Nick needed Judy's unwavering idealism to remember the honest, hopeful young fox he once was. The quiet, enduring image of their early partnership is not the dramatic arrest of the villain, but the small moments of quiet collaboration. Nick's wry smile as Judy succeeds, Judy's gentle but firm refusal to accept his jaded worldview. It is a partnership built on difference, strengthened by mutual respect, and defined by the quiet promise that, together, they could finally make Zootopia live up to its name. Let the image of the two of them, the small rabbit and the sly fox, standing side by side, watching the lights of the great city settle in your mind. The city is quiet now, and so is your heart. Rest deep now. The history is complete, and the future is waiting.